I do not really claim much about being an educationalist involved very much in education for sustainable development, but that is still an emerging area. And having been in the education for past almost 2.5 more decades, I feel that I've tried my bit in this area, and it will be more than theoretical. What I have tried, I would like to share with you, and perhaps my reflections on what is happening around and how best we can introduce this into or mainstream this into curriculum. That is, these are the takes. So I've titled it "Experience, Experiments, and Expectations." Looking forward and from that angle. Yes, I'm reminded of John Donne's very famous lines as we start this reflection. That is, each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind, humankind, whatever. Therefore, sent not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. So this is today when we start this reflection, I am every day being reminded of the situation surrounding us. For example, in Doha, we had last week up to 48 degrees centigrade. That's not really too tough for being in Doha or in the Middle East. But we have everyday reports coming from various parts of the country regarding wildfires. Latest from Greece, then California regularly, Australia, Spain, France, Canada, Italy, United Kingdom, and again lately from Algeria. And then we also read about cataclysmic events, downpour, and landslides last week in Korea, in Raigad, in Mumbai, in Maharashtra, then in the US, in very many South American states, and many other parts of Asia and Africa even. And this is one reality on the one side. On the other side, we find waste dumping happening the world all over. Some very visibly, like in southern hemisphere, or the global south, or economic south, so to say. Waste dumping in a very visible manner, whereas in other places in a more discreet manner, but waste is being generated all over thanks to human consumption. And that is definitely affecting the waters, the lifeline of the life source for every being on the planet, especially for humans and animals. It becomes really polluting, uh, beginning with E. coli on the one side. On the other side, the threat, which is not imminent, but it is definitely there, of microplastics entering lifeline, bloodstream even. So these are these affecting us as people interested in life, in education, is one question that comes before me. Yes, does that diminish us? Does it? Are we getting involved? Are we not really being anxious, but at least being concerned, and concerned about what we can do about it? Is one major question when in connection with this reflection. The second is, we will just run through this just in case somebody is not really familiar. I presume that all of you around are familiar with these kind of thinking, basic minimums, but still we will just run through. Number one is regarding sustainable lifestyles. Is sustainability as a thought a new thing? Maybe speaking exactly using this word might be relatively new, but this had been there. I think basically, at least 2 centuries ago, most of the lifestyles of humans all around the world had been sustainable. Maybe they didn't have any other way of living. But this is more visible even today, when we look at more of indigenous communities across the world. with a need-based economy and very minimally exploitative. Still, vestiges of this are visible in such communities. Vestiges, I would say, they are also increasingly being influenced by the modern so-called civilization. And in 19th and 20th century, we definitely know about industrial revolution and the material progress on the one hand, and the environmental gradual degradation and resource depletion happening uh, across the world, especially in the Western countries. And in 19th century, we have people like Thoreau and John Muir speaking about living in tune with, in harmony with the planet, with the nature. The ideas of conservation on the one hand, preservation on the other hand, and like people like John Muir, botanist, a geologist, a leading thinker, would, in spite of his scientific background, would still go for a preservation approach where he would find value of what is around us, the planet and its elements, in themselves, because they are valuable and they can be of value more than in terms of money terms, in terms of, more than in terms of economic progress. It can be sacred, it can be spiritual, it can be mystical, it can be ennobling and even enriching life in a different perspective altogether. There had been leaders also like Theodore Roosevelt of United States, Richardson, Bob Baker, another botanist, and our own father of our nation, Gandhiji, who had the vision to speak about greed and need in those times, that there is human greed, and it is to be curtailed, lest there be not enough for human needs. And then people like Aldo Leopold is there. And a radical thing, maybe I would say more related to all of us, would be Silent Spring, which is very familiar to most people, at least from a GK point of view, but definitely a very great watershed, so to say, in sustainability thinking as such. But this is a kind of thought evolution, so to say. But as the concept as such, maybe the word was there, but concept as such, we all know now, in 1987 report, the World Commission on Environment and Development, and the report named Our Common Future, and by Dr. Gro Harlem Brundtland, the Norwegian Prime Minister, twice Prime Minister, and diplomat, health professional. I believe she is still alive. And she had been heading this committee, and the coinage of this very cliched and very famous kind of definition, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs, is thanks to her and that committee. This report brought the concept of sustainability into mainstream international discourse, so to say. And then my own, personally speaking, I was deeply influenced by this 1992 Rio de Janeiro summit when I was a senior student of theology. And we were having some opportunity to think theology in terms of ecology. In those times, very radically new thing in theological circles. And then we had the good fortune to think about and organize a seminar even on this eco-theology in those times. And I had the good fortune to write a short paper on how dialogue can be instrumental in bringing about sustainability, though I didn't use the word sustainable at the time, but definitely in those terms. At the time, the one who was helping me, guiding me out, told, "What is there to do with that?" But now everyone is speaking about the importance of having dialogue of various cultures, various faiths, various backgrounds to come together and engage in dialogue so that there is sustainability. And now we have the latest agenda of the United Nations, adopted by almost all leading nations, including India, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we have supportive activities, especially by the civil society organizations, green movements, and research-based campaigns in many parts of the country, world, and especially we can see in the UK even now. This is happening, and we find even now youth are agitating against the present trend and needs to bring in sustainability. So they are getting educated some or other in this matter. Now, as education for sustainable development as a concept is still relatively new when compared to sustainability itself. And it is a kind of understanding that unless there is education in this connection, it is not possible to attain sustainability. And as Nicely put it initially, it is about integrating all these aspects, interrelated aspects, economic, social, political, technological, and environmental, into curriculum, formal, non-formal, and also lifelong education. Education also is to be seen beyond the typical framework of formal, but into the non-formal, and also even after the so-called formal education, how lifelong learners we all ought to be in this domain. ESD allows every human being to acquire the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values necessary to shape a sustainable future. UNESCO has given more or less similar explanation in these terms. That means including sustainable development issues into teaching and learning. And then some key elements we could look at is about promoting competencies like critical thinking, imagining future scenarios, and making decisions in a collaborative way. Education for sustainability, sustainable development would imply holistic approach, definitely systems thinking instead of very case-specific or individualized thinking, connected thinking, and critical thinking, definitely, and local and global perspectives, again, more or less same, spoken in other terms, and participatory. Very important is participatory and ethical values involved to be involved in education, and education for action. So this would be basically the crux of sustainable education for sustainable development. As far as Indian scenario is concerned, what is the scenario right now? We have this National Action Plan on Climate Change adopted way back in 2008. That shows a great progressive step as far as policies are concerned. And CBSE in the school level has introduced EVS almost around that time, I believe. And I have been going through the affiliation criteria of CBSE, re-affiliation and affiliation. And one major chunk of one section is totally devoted to sustainability-related practices and infrastructure, all these things related to sustainability. So that part is well taken care of, and people are, those who run the schools are kind of forced to comply with this norm. So that in a way it is happening, at least technically speaking, it is happening. UGC also took initiative, and I do not know which year it was, but then in 2014, when we were in the college, we got an order that this environment studies is to be implemented in colleges. But then typically the colleges couldn't do because they are under the university, and university decides the curriculum. But then our college, where I used to work in Kochi, Sacred Heart College, became autonomous that year, and since we were then responsible for our own curriculum, we thought that we should be doing this. We were interested, and we had no other go but to incorporate. But there was great difficulty in doing that, because uh, we are given a time structure, we are given a kind of staff structure, and within that, to introduce a new course would be very tough. So how to find time for that? All these were very difficult issues to be tackled, and we somehow managed. Being a new autonomous college, we thought that it was our task to be in this league, and perhaps we were one of the first colleges to introduce that, with great difficulty, because the typical faculty members with their they have usually 16 uh, hours to be managed in classroom interaction in a week, and they wouldn't be very happy to do anything extra in this regard. And finally, we had to get the support of volunteers, maybe some people from some of the students who were doing research had to do some teaching, and they were asked to do teaching of environment studies. We had the curriculum ready, as UGC had already provided the detailed curriculum, and we introduced. And it was still, it was not really done in a proper fashion, because there was so much resistance. It was an additional thing, and the university wouldn't bless us, in spite of this being a UGC mandate and a Supreme Court order was there. In spite of that, we found it very difficult to incorporate into the curriculum and the mark list. So everything had to be, all this effort had to be extra, and it didn't carry the same value as it would with other courses. But after 3 years, then university also got that they had to implement it, and they kind of did a very improvised kind of a thinking. They told that every course, every discipline had to incorporate environmental components into their curriculum. So whether it is mathematics or chemistry or languages, they had to have a component. And so they all were forced to do that. And since the university was following this track, we also did the same. So, but I found that the exercise became a kind of wishy-washy exercise, what we call naam ke vaste, and I don't think there was any sincere effort put into that. And I never felt that the university leadership or the teaching leadership as such was very keen on this, in spite of the regulation. So that is one story, one experience. And then we have now NEP 2020 with a lot many repeated statements regarding this being a very important aspect of education from the beginning of its exposition regarding the educational scenario facing us, and climate crisis is being repeated, and how important it is that this is a kind of value to be nurtured through curriculum, though, so that way. And interestingly, day before yesterday, I think yesterday or day before, we have a circular from UGC asking all CBSE schools, no, I mean, not from UGC, but from CBSE, all CBSE schools to do a celebration of 3 years of NEP. But the main activity proposed is every child to plant a tree wherever possible, whether at home or whether their own homestead or elsewhere. Every child undergoing CBSE curriculum is now asked in the circular to do this activity in 2 months' time, maybe August, September, I believe. So that is interesting in the sense that shows some kind of an inclination towards having something to do with sustainability, maybe tokens, but all the same, there is a thinking happening even at the policy level. And we also know India is having in the non-formal, or what you call lifelong learning sector, or even the civil society organizations, research going on, typically led by Center for Science and Environment and very many others, in the area of environment and related issues and sustainability, and providing models and collecting data and analyzing and publishing, and leading to policy related insights as well. So this is one scenario. In this connection, I spoke to at least 20, almost 2 dozen of young people who had completed their schooling in the past 10 to 12 years or 13, 15 years. And I asked them what is their take on the inputs they received from their schooling as far as sustainability thinking and practices are concerned. To not to my surprise, but as I expected, almost all of them invariably told that they had hardly anything that has sustained them or sustained in them relating to practices or even ideas related to sustainability. Maybe one or two of them told that waste management and maybe not to waste water, not to waste energy. These were some positive responses, but most of them told that they didn't have anything to do with these training, these aspects as far as their schooling was concerned. And I knew the schools; they're well-rated schools, most of them, and both in private sector as well as in government sector, central schools, and even otherwise. So this is a reality which is happening, and two of them responded, which I was happy to hear that they got some inspiration to at least minimize wastage in food and also in water and electricity, not from a monetary point of view, but rather on a sustainability point of view, thanks to their parents. One a doctor, another a teacher. So I knew this teacher and I called her up, and she's a chemistry teacher, but she told that she's at least trying repeatedly with her classes to instill in them values related to environment, and they would be like not to litter to start with, keep making your premises, keeping your premises clean, classroom clean, etc. to start with. So that would be one positive thing. I also asked some of my colleagues way back. We had implemented very strict policies in the college and regarding this sustainability related issues. And I was just asking whether this had any impact on the students. We ought to do a study. We have not done that. And what I got was they were trying to adhere to these norms, at least when they were in the college. They were forced to. So some of them had caught on these ideas, but very rarely we still have to study and do a study to see whether it has caught on to them, whether they continue with it, whether these practices themselves were sustainable. That is to be seen. So I am reminded by Mark Twain very interestingly, I have never let my schooling come in the way of my education. So whether school is really being a center for education, whether people are being educated there in a sustainable fashion is to be thought of, and whether good practices are being gained from elsewhere, maybe by general reading or some other inspirational sources rather than the school, is to be thought of. I will narrate some of the campus experiments which I was involved with in 3 campuses. One is we try to include this as a core value, that the campus is concerned about care for the planet. So we could incorporate this into our set of core values. That is and create policy statements regarding the campus approach towards environment and waste disposal. Then we thought that campus layout could itself be educative. The way in which we construe our infrastructure, the road, the tarring, then the walls, all this could be educative, and it can be done in that fashion. And we had a very good experiment in Kochi, in Kalamasheri, where Rajagiri Hill campus is located, where we had experiments which could be visible on in terms of biodiversity, water conservation, rainwater harvesting, waste management, alternative technology regarding energy, also technology for energy, then conservation and preservation. For example, we had tried to do a model of the traditional sacred groves in terms of water conservation as a theme. The other campus, Sacred Heart College, where I used to work, we had the campus had declared itself as an SDG campus, and it had been significantly displaying SDGs for students as well as the public who used to visit, so they could learn from the very campus itself. Then we had this exercise of students getting involved in painting the walls using the themes for sustainability. We had also the annual college calendar based on the UN theme, environment theme every year. We also introduced some organic farming initiatives with both these colleges, and they combinedly used to farm a farm where organically without the external chemical inputs. And the focal theme behind was one, health, in the sense health of humans, health of soil, health of environment, all this related. And we had been associating with a couple of organizations as well, civil society organizations, which were working in these areas. We had also strict plastic ban. Ban was strict, but maybe there were violations, repeated violations, but all the same, where the institution was directly involved, it was really controlled regarding the banners used, the decorations, the food being served. In all these, we tried to avoid disposables and to the extent possible, plastic. And we had also workshops on repurposing, recycling, exhibitions. And we had alternatives, small scale alternatives like bio wall, where instead of a wall or fully packed wall, we could use creepers for having a fence or cover, and bio bouquet, where the typical plastic wrapped bouquets were substituted by live plants or which the guests could carry, and a common store of washable utensils, where instead of disposables, we had a centralized collection of this. And we also introduced new programs in environment science. I had proposed a new program in social work with disaster management as the specialization. I think it has not taken off since I left the campus. And we have, in our present campus where I work in Doha right now, we have introduced this idea of adopting two themes of sustainable development goals every year, beginning with 2023, so that by 2030, the campus is familiar with all the goals and does something about them. Plus one, that's the last goal, the international and collaboration for achieving these goals. So this is being introduced in our own calendar, our own school handbook and calendar is carrying these themes right now. So these are some of the experiments we had been had involved with in various campuses. And now, what are the new directions the education for sustainable development should take? Now, we had been, in the past 1 decade, perhaps, we had been reinventing or speaking much more about the revised Bloom's taxonomy, which is almost half a century or more old. But then what we typically speak about are outcomes. So we speak about outcome-based education. In CBSE nowadays, they speak about competency-based education or skill-based education. And all said and done, how far competencies are being listed and attempted at, and finally assessed are very important. And typically, we are still stuck with the preliminary ones, which are information, knowledge, understanding, and beyond that is still very difficult. So, an education for sustainability would definitely demand to go much more beyond. Typically, to start with applying what we learn, and applying along with reflection. And typically in the development circles, we speak about the cycle of action, reflection, action cycle, and in which this reflection could also include further hunting or mining for data, looking at and observing phenomena, and then coming back and reflecting and applying new insights into action. So this process is one. But basically, to start with applying, what does this learning of various sciences, language, and mathematics mean to us in life, related to our life on this planet? So this is very important. I think that is a major challenge for the teachers, educators, as to how this could be made meaningful as far as our life is concerned. And lastly, but definitely not the least, that is about creation, that being creative, being the ability to problematize on issues, and then analyze and understand, and also derive its solutions and propose them, test them, try them, and even able to manufacture them. So that kind of a possibility, this is a very critical area, I think, now we have to look at. And we find that definitely, though technology is not the solution or the only solution, it does have a great say. And it is very important that this aspect of generating ideas and how problems can be solved using science and technology should be a kind of training that is happening at the school level. So that I was happy to see that last year in our annual expo, some of our students were trying to bring materials like biodegradable plastic, building material which are earth friendly and all that. So but this is to be really promoted as far as learning is concerned, rather than typical rote learning and exam orientation. And in my experience, though I respect my teachers, and I hope that we have a friendly relationship with most of the teaching staff wherever I worked. But I have a real complaint against them, in the sense that unless the teachers are involved, nothing can happen. And the key to sustainable education for sustainability is none other than teacher. And I regret to say that this framework is still missing with most of the teachers. I think maybe those who are present in this platform might be different. You are really interested, and hence you are here. But honestly speaking, without any animosity to anyone, I feel that the teacher circle, I have found very many enlightened teachers teaching very well their subjects, very sincerely, and totally unaware of the issues related to even the concept of sustainable development goals, which the whole world is speaking about. And almost every day there is a discussion on the media or in the newspaper. And in spite of that, totally blissfully unaware of this aspect. So this calls for a very, very important input into teacher education. This happens also regarding value education as such, though almost all teachers would teach some value or other in their own way. But value education per se in teacher education is having no serious effect or role, I feel, in spite of a course being there. It is similar. The case regarding education for sustainability also is similar. I think this is to be radically re-looked at and thought of, especially with the possibilities being offered in the new education policy for integrated teacher education program of 4-year combined and all that. Then how these elements can be incorporated is to be seen. I'm still at a loss as to how to do this, but then I think this requires serious attention, because this is the greatest point on which sustainability can depend, because future generation is to be formed in this framework, and that is in the hands of teachers. And so it is very, very important that teachers understand the importance of this aspect of education. Maybe finally, I also feel that religions have a major role to play. People are still influenced by religion, but in a very religious manner, not in a life-oriented manner, usually. And if life-oriented also, typically it is relating to inner life or interpersonal life. Other than that, our relationship with planet is very rarely touched upon in religion, though there are very meaningful sayings and commands in almost all religions. In very many of the Hindu scriptures, we find very inspirational aspects regarding our relationship. In Islam also, I believe there are. And in Christianity, especially in the recent past, the church leaders, especially the holy fathers in the last 3 or 4 of them, have been very articulate regarding this. But then their articulation has not really found any echo as far as the Christian practice is concerned. That's what I feel. So again, they have, especially the Islam and Christianity are two religions all over the world having very systematic kind of religious education happening on a weekly basis at least. If they were concerned really about this aspect of sustainability as a very spiritual and religiously important aspect, then this could really be making some great influence on next generation. That's what I feel. And in this case, again, there is great importance for interreligious dialogue. I had the good fortune to attend one such in Qatar in last March. Very enlightening, and with people coming, especially from Islamic background, speaking very passionately about it, and efforts being made to convert the mosques and the community around into green mosques. So such efforts are there. And beyond that, it is sustainability itself is an approach towards spirituality that without even reference to any faith element, we can still be spiritual by being concerned about this element of non-exploitative or minimally exploitative kind of lifestyles, where we live in harmony with the rest of the beings. That's a great spirituality which can be part of anyone, I think. So this is also to be taken into consideration. I think I can end my reflections here, and we could have now time for interaction, or maybe others who have more insights could share. I think these are the things I would love to share, and I conclude my presentation here. Thank you.
Thus, practical lessons linked to real-life sustainability, an effective way to strengthen environmental awareness among youth.
Somebody's asking suggestions?
Yes, sir.
I hope that whatever the last segment of my presentation was an effort at narrating what we practically try to do. But all the same, one typical thing, I would say that from education, can we at least today, starting with very minimum kind of an agenda as an outcome, can the children be, can education lead to at least the skill to understand how waste is being generated? Secondly, the skill to minimize generating waste. Thirdly, the skill to manage waste if generated. This, I think, at least this could be a starting point. Because climate, the sustainability is not alone related to waste generation, but this could be one starting point, and that we are not going to pollute the earth further. Though there are so many other dimensions other than polluting, but then at least one issue which we can tackle is this. So when a student passes out from 10th grade, he or she is equipped with the skill to understand what are the kinds of waste being generated, and how each one is responsible for that, and how we can minimize that, and if at all it is unavoidable, how to manage it properly so that there is least harm to everyone. So that is one typical aspect, I would say, for the start. We can build on that further.
Thank you, Father, for that. We have one more question here. Any objective or guidelines for students to make them aware with regard to sustainability?
I think sustainability, to my mind, I am drawing a blank right now, because what I had been trying to tell is that regarding consumption, as the thing is that the idea regarding consumption being a tool is a very important thing. Typically, a casual activity, but from a casual activity, it is an economic activity. From an economic and casual activity, can we think about consuming, which we do as a conscious activity? That what do we consume? Is secondly, regarding the alternatives available, whatever be that, it can be clothing, it can be footwear, it can be elements for commuting, it can be your book and pen and paper, it can be food, and whatever be that, what are the choices we make, whether the children are able to understand this, and how do they make choices. Usually mechanically they make choices, they're given, and hardly ever critically. So from an unconscious and very mechanical to a conscious and critical kind of a consumption practice is a great tool. It can also become a very spiritual tool when we decide that, yes, I can do this, and I need to do that. I can avoid this so that things are for the better. So that way, when a person is able to make decisions regarding one's consumption, that is a wonderful thing to happen, I feel. That's one suggestion I would. So consumption being made a tool, and critically aware and conscious consumption.
Father, sister is asking whether there's any PPT to make them think deeply about the same.
I do not know. I have not prepared any PPT as such, but then there might be any number of them available. And if we can hunt for them and see, it's rather than PPTs, I think there should be a continuous, there should be a commitment to the course, and teaching community as such. Yes, individual teacher also can make a difference, but as a whole, to repeatedly instill these practices into the campus is very important, I feel. Anyhow, no PPT with me, right?
Thank you so much, Father. We have one more question here. Plastic is a big menace. Shouldn't our campuses be made plastic free?
Yes, definitely, at least in the sense of disposable plastics, which we can avoid. Yes, if we are committed to that, it is possible. I would like to tell you that I had gone all around the country on a motorbike for about 20,000 kilometers, and it took 4 months. And I had been going around, and depending on whatever is available on the way, but I could manage without even a single plastic carry bag being added to my luggage or to my use. That was a decision to be made, and because we found that we are adding, each one is adding, and piles of plastics being dumped in beautiful hill areas in Mizoram, Manipur. We could see that, and how the beautiful places are being, not only here, even other places like Chennai or Kochi, we can see this. But unimaginably beautiful places being made polluted. So it is only a matter of decision. And in two of our campuses, we could do that to a great extent. But again, I would say that it will depend on the involvement of teachers. When the teachers be committed that this is an issue to be addressed, a very serious issue to be addressed by everyone. The education cannot be without this. I think that kind of a conviction is to be done in the teaching community. Then only this can deliver. Definitely, individual teachers will make a difference.
Thank you so much, Father, for that. We have one more question here. In New Bloom's taxonomy, SBE stands for?
I think it is skill. I do not know whether Bloom's taxonomy has this. SBE is skill-based. Oh, sorry. Uh, Skill-based education. That's what I had intended by SBE. It is not from Bloom's taxonomy per se, but nowadays in CBSE we are speaking more in terms of skill-based education and competency-based education.
Thank you so much for that, Father. We have one more question here. Father, what are your views about the waste management system in campus where the organic and inorganic waste can be disposed and used separately?
I don't think there is any question of my views. It is a great possibility, and if the administration and leadership and the teachers are determined, definitely the students will cooperate, and this can be done very well. So that that principle of segregation at the source can be done, and this could be a very interesting area for research on campuses. Small scale researches can be done on the ways in which we can practice and the kind of consumption that is happening. All these are quite possible, and the data generated being presented periodically can be revealing how much waste is being collected in a day, in a week on the campus, and what kinds of waste, and how the waste contamination happened because of this simple decision at the source that we mix up or we don't mix. Those simple things can be very revealing and educative, provided we have a mind for that and we have a team for that. And students will be eager to catch up if the teachers are there. I'm 100% sure they will be very eager to come along with you.
Thank you so much for that, Father. There's another question here. How would neighborhood schools impact educational programs that are typically provided in larger schools?
I didn't get that. Neighborhood schools?
How would neighborhood schools impact educational programs that are typically provided in larger schools?
I didn't really understand what is typically, maybe larger schools are and neighborhood schools are maybe primary schools.
Yes, I think that's what they've meant.
To the local community.
Yeah, I think that's what they've meant.
I think whether larger schools or not, the two things are there. One, NEP is proposing very many things regarding school clusters, which can be, if I do not know, there are very many people who find it threatening, but it can be, if meaningfully and implemented, it can be very useful. On the one hand, where the resources are commonly pooled and the ideas generated by the cluster is implemented everywhere. But on the other hand, a small school can definitely make a change in the community, provided the teacher or teachers. If it is a single teacher school, the responsibility is with the teacher, and that would suffice. How to influence parents in the locality, that can be done. Only thing is that whether the teacher is having those kind of inputs within him or her is the issue. So it will depend from vary from place to place, and I'm really not familiar with such schools right now. But provided the teacher is enlightened, he or she can definitely do much in a neighborhood school, and more easily involve the community and more easily influence the neighborhood because of such presences than the typically more isolated, uh, walled kind of schools.
Thank you so much, Father, for that. We have one more question here. How can we teach adolescents to maintain the balance between environment and society?
Environment and society. I didn't really fully grasp that question. You mean human progress and environment? I do not know. First of all, if that is the issue, I think we have very many misconceptions regarding environment is against development, and it is very easily set aside. That's the only thing, and thinking that this is all going to be against development or progress or economic progress. So we have to have the tools to assess the costs, and also to understand how in the long run everyone is to gain. So as you told rightly, the balance. For example, use of trees. We cannot. Initially, I mentioned two terms. One is conservation, and there is preservation. So there can be a balance between the two. That preservation in itself has some value, but not really necessary. Though it has value, whether while we conserve, which will be regenerative around us, the resources, the soil, the water, the biodiversity, all this, but still humans can also use, but that use is the key. How do we understand that use? To what extent can we use? So in some countries, they have real norms set for that. Even hunting is permitted in certain countries where wild animals are being hunted, but that doesn't deplete the hunting resources. Madhav Gadgil was speaking, we had a conversation, and he doesn't really say that we cannot eat the wild animals. If I remember correctly, my conversation, don't now quote and ask Madhav Gadgil has told like that. But he being a leading environmentalist, I was glad to hear a balanced view from him, saying that it is to be utilized in a sustainable manner. So it will depend on how exploitative our attitudes are and how we can use, which is built in a human tendency, whereas other beings tend to have less of it. They are basically need based, whereas humans have this capacity to look into the future and store up things. And to what extent can that be? So this calls for actually religious and spiritual kind of insights, where we think that this lifestyle is not really sustainable, neither for individuals nor for the community, and hence there is need for that kind of a change. And there is big debate going on even today, in spite of all these kind of revelations, past 50 years plus of scientific thinking. Apart, still there are science. There is science being promoted, saying that yes, nothing like that. Climate change is a myth, and we can use things. And there are strong lobbies researching on this and trying to bring in data which will establish this. This is happening. So therein lies the element of being a spiritual person, where we can also consider things from a balanced point of view. That's what I feel.
Thank you so much for that, Father. We have one question chat came in Facebook. Isn't it important to bring students out of the classroom and in nature to discuss sustainability and involve them in projects?
Oh, no doubt at all. There should be less in classroom, and I wouldn't say less or more, but definitely a balanced experiential learning regarding the air, water, soil, the biodiversity is very important, and I think it should be built in from the very small classes, and it should go on. according to their grades. In the manner should be different. That's it. Definitely different.
Thank you, Father, for that. We have one more question here. How important is the role of a teacher? Teachings.
The important role is of the teacher. Nobody else, I think. All are important. The students are important, and parents are important. The society and its regulations and its policies are important. But the key player, definitely, to my mind, is teacher. And teacher has definitely a major role to play in sustainability. And it will definitely be a major difference if the teacher is convinced. I would say if the principal is concerned, many things can happen. But unless the teacher is convinced, who is really teaching the students, interacting with the students on a day-to-day basis, and if he or she is convinced about these principles, and then there is definitely going to be change in this world, and the world will become a sustainable world because of that.
There's one more question here. Shouldn't India provide better support to zero waste startup initiatives?
Yes, no doubt. It should. It should. I think one point, the question, the one who raises the question might be trying, there is hardly any. So the support from the state mechanisms or the government machinery, local to higher, is very, very minimal in this kind of regards. And also enforcement is very minimal in India. And we have an example of Indore municipality where this has been successfully experimented in the last 5 years, being rated as the #1 city as far as municipal waste management is concerned. So they have shown that such a big city with a vast population could manage it with the political determination, political will of the local body. So it is very important that the local body elections are taken into consideration, and what are their policies, how they are going to implement, and this becomes an important aspect of consideration for everyone. I hope this is to be taken very seriously, and the government has to do much more in this area.
Thank you so much for that, Father. Shouldn't India be focusing more on sustainable tourism?
More or less, I do not know, but definitely there's a great potential in tourism, and provided it is in the right spirit, it can also become an incentive to make our heritage, our biggest heritage is the nature, more sustainable. But it is not happening. It is not happening in spite of all that being told about responsible tourism. It is highly irresponsible, and pristine locales are very easily transformed into filthy dumps of waste. And I am witness to that, and the authorities are least concerned about it. I have had experiences when I tried to raise this issue, and they felt least concerned about it in the state of Kerala only, where once or twice I've tried my bit with the authorities, and they had not been keen to respond to such issues where new picnic spots were being developed. But definitely, tourism has great potential, and in a state like Kerala or in the Northeast, we don't have to do any other thing but to maintain the environment intact without polluting it further and without making the waste dumps an eyesore. If we can manage, then that is enough. No other thing is required for tourism to be a thriving kind of a thing. But that is not happening, unfortunately. Again, local bodies have a major role to play. And if you are familiar with what you call the Gadgil Committee report, it is basically about the significant role the local bodies have to play as far as development of a locality is concerned, whether it is less to do with not to do things. As recommendations are there, but it is more to do with decision making on a sustainable level at the local levels. So this is the concern.
Thank you so much for that. Do we have any more questions? Father, there's one question here. Can environmental studies or sustainability provide students a better career path?
I think so. It is increasingly becoming a popular thing, and every major industry is now having a provision for sustainability. And there are officers appointed to monitor sustainability elements in planning till enforcement. So it could be sometimes as part of their corporate social responsibility, which is mandatory in India and elsewhere as well. But then even otherwise, now many organizations are looking at their own processes in a sustainable manner. They are beginning to, and getting people who are equipped to deal with that involved, maybe absorbing them so that they can guide the processes in a sustainable manner. But then what is important is that when you learn, that you learn to learn skills rather than trying to score marks, learning to learn what is around policies, the issues, and the problems, and how to tackle them, and the skills. These are very important, whatever be the area you learn, especially environment science. So I think it is time that we
Thank you
summed
so
up,
much.
and
Yeah.
I feel once again, if those who are present are teachers, yes, my appeal to them is that with you lies the future, and definitely this is to be taken up as an area passionately, sincerely, and explored and understood, and what you could do in your own specific subject-related domain as applicability, and again also as a kind of character formation for the students. So I hope the future would be safer and sustainable, and provided the teachers are deeply getting involved. And I would say that modern day virtue, irrespective of any religion or faith, would be that yes, a student is able to say that I am a zero waste person. That kind of a claim would be the statement of virtue today. And I'm not generating waste, I'm managing my waste at least. So this would be the modern day virtue for everyone, I think. Thank you.